Welcome back, watch fans. We're talking about the Rolex Day Date 36, one of the most controversial Rolexes out there. What does the watch say about you? What does wearing a Rolex Day Date say about you? The Rolex President, one of the most polarizing watches ever made by Rolex. You know, famously worn by Lyndon Johnson, by presidents. You know, it was always featured in their ads. You know, with a red telephone. You know, saying like, hey, you know, if the phone rang and, you know, you had to launch a nuclear strike, you'd be wearing a Rolex Day Date on your wrist. That's right, with a full bracelet. Now, here is the problem. This watch tends to attract two types of people today. Okay, two types. There's only two types of people who wear this watch today. I'm talking specifically about the Day Date 36. You basically have morons who wear this, which is about 70% of the market. That's right, 70% of the people wearing the Rolex Day Date 36 are basically morons. They're like newbie collectors who think that, you know, it's a flex piece, and it's not. And then you have guys who have, you know, they're wearing it as a kind of a style, as a fashion statement. You know, it's a kind of a vintage 70s thing. It's kind of a, hang on a second, we're going to give you a little bit of high production values here with the train here on the mean streets of Del Mar, California. And yeah, so basically you have two types. You got you got the newbies, you have complete morons, trashy people who wear this, you know, on the full bracelet, and you know, with a champagne dial usually, or they may even have the one was with the diamonds on the dial, or even worse, on the bezel. Diamonds on the bezel, full, like a round. Oh, that's like pure trash. Now, then you have like 25. Maybe it's. I think it's maybe 20. No, I shouldn't say. It's probably no. It's about 10%, 10 to 15% of the wearers of this watch wear it kind of as a fashion statement. It's kind of as an ironic, you know, 70s throwback, which is kind of how I wear it. Right now, I wear it on the strap, you know, to give it a little more versatility, you know, a little more low-key. I do have, of course, the infamous bark bracelet. But why is this watch so controversial? I'll tell you that in a second. But you know what? First of all, you do want to get our free weekly email newsletter. You should sign up for a free weekly newsletter so you'll know what is the correct price that you should be paying for one of these watches, because I actually do believe that there is going to be a move made. There's actually going to be moves being made in the Day Date 36 market very, very shortly, and you need to be aware of those. So make sure you click the link in the video description below. In the video description below is the link to get our free weekly newsletter, which tells you market trends, prices for Rolex, Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe, Vacheron, you know, really all the high-end watches that you need to be aware of, what's happening in the market with auctions, trends, rumors, gossip, all that other good stuff. Now, so again, back to where I was, you know, 80%, 90% of the people wearing this watch are complete assholes, okay? Especially if they have it on the bracelet, especially if it's kind of a new crispy bracelet. It basically tells you that they're brokesters. They're brokesters who really, they're trying to flex, but they can't afford the real watch, which is the Day Date 40. That's right, the Day Date 40 is, that's the real flex watch today. This watch was kind of the flex piece in the, you know, in the 60s, the 70s, into the 80s, and it peaked in 1987. 1987, the watch peaked. Let's take a look at this. Unbelievable but true. Now, famously, this was worn by Michael Ovitz, King of Hollywood. You know, 1987, famous picture of him. He had the champagne dial. And that was really when that watch was at its peak. It was kind of the icon of the 80s, the excess of the 80s, the cocaine 80s. You know, the whole look of the 80s was epitomized by a Rolex Day Date with a champagne dial. And what happened was, well, of course, what happens? By 1990, this was kind of seen as tacky, as obnoxious as kind of the watch worn by, you know, really just cretins. And of course, famously was worn by Alec Baldwin in Glengarry Glen Ross. You know, he was the sales manager, you know, in that famous scene. He's saying, hey, this watch costs more than your car, you know, that whole line. And yeah, he had the champagne dial. Excuse me. Which, by the way, tells you the champagne dial on the day date is really the it's kind of a tacky look, especially today, even to this day. So basically, this watch was completely out of favor, by the 90s. And look, what happens with fashion is everything goes in cycles. What was old is new again, and you know, onwards and upwards, right? You know, women's skirt lengths, they go up, they go down. You know, men's lapel widths, they go wide, they go narrow. Ties, you know, same thing, right? Everything is always kind of going in a cycle. And this watch bottomed out in the 90s. Okay, it bottomed out in the 90s. And when I was looking at this watch in 1998, I bought it. And I kind of thought of it as, you know, I actually bought it as, hey, this is kind of that obnoxious 80s watch. I think it's kind of ironic, right? I was like in my 20s, you know, it's kind of goofy. Yeah, of course, famously was worn by, you know, Tony Soprano, The Sopranos. I think that show started right around, actually right after I bought this watch. I think, or sometime around then. Actually, it was in that era. It was that era. And this kind of, look, this watch is known as kind of the boss watch, right? Now, who wears this watch, right? It really attracts mostly, it's a very brash watch, right? Especially on the full bracelet. It's for people who have big egos, right? You know, definitely entrepreneurs, you know, sales manager types of boiler rooms, you know, those types of people wear that watch. That's 90% of the market. Now, 10% of the market, which is the people who started buying them in the early 2000s, shortly after I bought it, because look, I am the trend leader, bought it for the same reason I bought it. You know, guys like, I don't know, it was Marc Jacobs, you know, fashion designer, famously had one, a couple of other people in fashion, Terry Richardson, the famous fashion photographer. I think he was canceled for sexual harassment or something, but he was big in the early 2000s. He famously had one of these, Terry Richardson, kind of arty photographer. And again, he had one of those mustache. He had the Dirty Sanchez mustache, you know, before all these hipsters today, right? I mean, that guy was the original hipster, Terry Richardson. I don't know if this guy's still around, but he actually, yeah, I remember seeing pictures of him wearing exactly this watch. And again, he wore this watch as a kind of as an ironic fashion statement. He wasn't wearing it as a flex piece. The guys who are buying this watch, I see this mistake being made. Again, there's really two types of people buying the Rolex Day Date today. There is, again, the guys who are buying it as a fashion statement, and they usually wear it on a strap like this, the way I have it. Or they may have it on a jingly and jangly bracelet. Again, the jingly jangly bracelet actually is the look. The rainbow bracelet. Because that gives it that, you know, true vintage look. The guys who have the crisp bracelet, the kind of, you know, or they buy the newer models, the double quick set, whatever, you know, that's a mistake. Basically, they're telling you that they're newbies, they have no taste, they really don't know what they're doing. They're morons, basically. So those are really the two types of people wearing it. Now, here is what I believe is going to happen with the day date market. I think there's going to be a major shift coming up in prices. There's going to be a major shift coming up in prices that you need to be aware of. There's something very big happening. I'm going to cover that in my next video, but you do need to get our free weekly newsletter so that you are kept on top of all the trends that are happening, and you know, to get into the watches before they start booming, so you can ride those waves for profit. Listen, every watch I've ever owned, ever bought, I've always made money on, and you should be doing the same thing. So again, get my free newsletter. Click the link in the video description below to get the Watch Reporter newsletter. All right, my friends, see you at the top.